makes the customized learning implementation at the Harrisburg High School different than a traditional or an industrial age classroom?
I would say the big idea is that we are looking at the zone of proximal development for each kid, their ZPD, and we're looking at where are they and where can they go from there, what's their potential. And so when you come into a classroom, not everybody is necessarily on the same page on the same day. There's that customization of we're meeting students where they are. Whereas when I taught in a traditional classroom, you came in, my lesson plan was on the board, I had an agenda, we all walked through the agenda together. If you came the next day and your homework wasn't done, I had a binder and you wrote down, I don't have my assignment, here's why, but you still moved on. And so there is this flexibility in what we do, and there's a freedom in what we do. And so students, when they come in, have this opportunity to progress at the rate that is working for them, not at the rate that is working for the person who's sitting next to them.
So why is that difference important to you?
Well, when I was teaching in the traditional classroom, I remember seeing students who would reach a point of no return in my class. They had turned in so many late assignments, they got themselves so far behind, they gave up. And I knew and they knew that regardless of what they did, they could not pass my class. And I knew that as a teacher, I was philosophically bound to this is the way I run my room. I didn't feel freedom to meet that student where they were and give them grace and concession. And so they sat there and they vegged for the rest of the semester, didn't try on anything else from that point forward. And I saw them again the following fall. And that always bothered me because I felt like I have done that student a disservice. And so the appeal to this for me was I don't have to be bound by that philosophy anymore. I can be bound by that idea, all right, you're stuck, you're not irredeemable. Let's find what works for you and let's climb you out of this situation. Whether, right now I have 2 students who are working in an alternate setting because that works for them. I have students who work really well alone. I have students who work well with a partner, students who work well with a small group. And they have that freedom and flexibility to do that, and to me I feel like that is meeting the needs of students in a way I couldn't before.
So as you think back to where you started, what would you identify as the starting point or the ramp in for you in terms of customized learning?
For me personally?
Yes.
Well, I ran away from it. Right away, Dr. Lean approached us, maybe 4 years ago, and said, I've got this great idea. And I said, you're crazy. I'm not going to do this. I cannot plan 21 lesson plans every day. And he said, that's not what it is. And I said, that's what you're describing. I can't do that. And so I applied for a job at a different school. I was offered that job, and it came right down to it, and I couldn't take it. The next year, he was really ramping into it again, and he approached me again and said, Mrs. Gross, I want you to be a part of this. And I said, you're still crazy. I don't want to be a part of this. And I went on maternity leave, and while on maternity leave is when the program really started getting going. And I was grateful that I wasn't there. I thought, it can't bother me if I'm not here. And I came back and applied for a job at another school, got accepted into that job, and I thought, no, I can't go. Because when I was interviewing for that other job, they were asking me questions, and all of my answers were customized learning answers. And I remember sitting in that interview and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I doing? My answers to you are exactly what Dr. Lean is offering us. And so I came back and I said, I'm on board, Dr. Lean. I am ready. And from that point forward, I have not looked back. And so I have just jumped into this and have loved every minute of it. Well, loved is a little strong. I have appreciated every minute of it despite some of the really difficult situations with it.
That really takes us to the next question. So what was the most challenging aspect of getting involved with customized learning implementation?
I think for me personally, it was letting go of control in the classroom. I'm a very organized, disciplined person. I like things to run like this. I like things to be organized like this, and I tried to impart that on my students in that very traditional industrial age manner. And this requires you to let go of control, and you have to allow students to make their mistakes. And you have to be able to say, you're making a mistake here, but I'm going to let you make it because that's how you learn. And so letting go of that control took a lot of time for me, a lot of conversations with other teachers, a lot of mental, okay, what does this look like for me. And so that was very difficult for me. But now that I am on the other side of it, I look back at who I was, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I have explained to students sometimes, in my classroom, I used to deduct 50% if you turned something in late. And I said 10 minutes late, 10 days late, didn't matter. I deducted it half. And my students were like, that's horrible. And I said, you're right, that is horrible. And I said, I used to deduct a grade on an essay, a letter grade a day for it being late. And I said, how ridiculous is that? And my students see it and I see it. And at the time, it made sense to me because I was encouraging them to meet deadlines. But now looking back, I look at the grades that I gave those students and I'm like, that does not reflect their ability. It doesn't reflect the quality. That reflected whether or not you could turn something in on time. And so now that I've released that control and I've flipped my philosophy, I feel very validated now in what I do.
So how would you describe the general reaction or response of students to customized learning?
Last year, there was a very big resistance because we were asking them to change a lot of things all at once. And to their credit, they handled it very well. And now this year, the reaction I'm seeing from students is an eagerness. The students who are a part of it now as freshmen had a greater understanding of what they were getting themselves into. Their teachers last year were able to prepare them. We were able to prepare them a little bit more. So I hear a lot of students more eager. When can I accelerate? How do I do this? And prepared to do revisions, seeking me out if they need to do revisions. That self-advocacy and responsibility piece is present at just a little bit higher level this year. And I've heard from a lot of parents, my student wants to accelerate. This program offers that. How do they do that? And so there is an acceptance of it in a different way that's very exciting to see.
So how has customized learning impacted your relationship with learners?
Oh, exponentially increase that relationship piece because now I am working with them one-on-one on a very individualized basis every day. I used to stand up front, here's my PowerPoint, take your notes on the little beautiful page that I've created for you, and I might say hi to you, I might interact with you briefly, and that would be it. Now I am forced to interact with you every day because you're in one place, and I don't have my pretty PowerPoint anymore because I'm teaching the same thing 15 times. And it's so much more meaningful because I can meet that student exactly where they are. They might not need all the background information. Awesome, let's pick up right where you are. So I feel like I understand the background of why my students feel the way they do about English in particular, maybe where their fears come from. I understand what their strengths are on such a different level than I do before. And when I speak to a parent in a conference, I feel like I am more genuine in what I say because I really know that student because I've interacted with them every day. I have looked at their work, I've called for revisions, I have stepped them through that revision process. So when I say to a parent, their strength is this, I can mean it. Their challenging aspects are this because I've really seen that. And so I feel like there is an intentionality to my relationship now that has really improved the quality of what I do.
How has it impacted your role as a teacher?
I take a step back now. Like for example, today in a classroom, 2 students were sitting side by side and one asked a question about indirect characterization. And I explained it to him, gave him some examples, and the student next to him had earphones on, took off his earphones, asked the exact same question. And everybody chuckled and I said, hey, have Riley explain that to you, because I just explained it to him. And so I listened in, and Riley explained it, and I followed up and said, Colby, do you understand what he said? Yeah, but I still am not sure, and so I was able to fill in the gaps. So I see students going to one another, seeking that information, and then I am there to kind of facilitate and be a part of that process. And so it's not me standing up on stage doing the show anymore, which was hard to let go of because I loved the show. I loved that aspect of it. And now I get to kind of watch them really take on what they're doing and guide and instruct where they need it.
So what evidence would you offer that customized learning is impacting learners and learning positively?
Great example. A couple days ago in our big TPC, I was sitting working and the Spanish teacher was working with another student on a quiz. And they were going over it and he still wasn't quite understanding, and he said, I really think I need to study for it. And I went, how often do we hear kids say, I need to study for this test before I take it? And not only that, then go sit down and actually do it before he takes the assessment. And I remember thinking, how cool. We have kids aware of what they need to do to prepare for that. And so I really see that evidence in their behavior. They are recognizing where their gaps are, and they are on their own taking steps that they need to fill those gaps. And that's fun to see because they are aware of their own learning in a way I haven't seen students aware of that, and they care about it in a different way. They are invested in it. I see that intrinsic investment versus just an extrinsic, I need to get my grade. And that's exciting.
So, what advice would you offer teachers in schools considering customized learning?
I would say infrastructure. When we went into our very first year, we had all the philosophy in our minds and we were so on board with what we wanted to do. We just didn't have the nuts and bolts of how to implement it. And so we were, like Dr. Lean always said, building the airplane as we were flying it. And there were benefits to that, but I would say as much of the airplane as you can have built before you take off is good, because now this year we're looking at places where, like, we have a handbook in place, and that handbook has our terminology, it has our policy, so we have that kind of guiding document to go back to. We have commonalities in our policies and our procedures that kind of lay that foundation. And so as much of that foundation as can be in place beforehand, I think that is huge.
So as you think about this year-and-a-half journey of implementation, what would you offer as an anecdote or an experience from the implementation that was particularly meaningful or impactful for you?
Yep, absolutely. I had a student last year who turned in an essay over a short story, quite obviously plagiarized. And in the past, I would have given that student a 0, had a lecture with them about not cheating, and we would have moved on. Can't do that in this setting. And so I approached her and I said, hey, this is plagiarized, why? And she said, well, because I'm not a good writer. I'm not a good reader. I don't know what that story means. And so I just went and found something that I thought you'd like to hear. And I said, hey, kiddo, you are a good reader. You are a good writer. You can do this. If I wanted to know what the internet said, I'd go figure out what the internet said. I want to know what you think. And so I realized she really was doubting her own abilities. She wasn't cheating because she was lazy or bored. She was cheating because she didn't trust herself. And so I said, I want you to do it again. Pick a new short story, start this process over. And she did, and she brought it to me, and she had this huge smile on her face, and she said, not a word of that came from the internet. And I said, really? And she goes, I did it all by myself. And I read it, and it was fantastic. And I was able to have this conversation with her, and I watched her confidence just kind of, I can do this. And so that was a really defining moment for me to see really what was at the root of why this student didn't want to do the work. And then when I encouraged them, how beautiful it was on the other end. And so that's what I love about this, is you get to see students transform, and there is a transformation in who they believe themselves to be and what they are capable of. And that is going to carry them so far in life if they have that confidence, and I can do this. I can tackle something difficult. I can seek out resources. I don't have to just give the teacher the answer that I think they want. I can give the teacher what I think is true. And so it's fun to see learners empowered that way and have a different belief in who they are. Not just as a student, but who they are as a person. That's really
Steph,
fun.
I'm terribly sorry for the interruption.
Oh, that's
Students,
kind of...
If you are participating in the Teddy Bear fundraiser shopping tonight in student council, could you please report to the office for a really quick meeting? Thank you.
Steph, as you think about your experience, the example you just offered, what do you think the implications are for the continued journey of customized learning in terms of the future for you as a teacher and for learners?
Oh, I will be a part of this for as long as I can. It would be very difficult for me to go back. And so I see this implication in terms of transforming who we are as teachers, transforming this idea of who students are and what our roles are. And another implication is I see teachers uniting in a way we haven't united before, and that's fun too. I used to just teach in my classroom, and I would see a teacher if I walked and asked them about a lesson, but there is an intentionality in interweaving who we are as professionals, and I think the implications of that are making our school stronger. Because I know what Mrs. Keppen is doing in her classroom, and I trust her as a professional. I've had conversations with her about that. So when a student says to me, oh, X, Y, Z is happening, I can say, hold on a second. I know what's going on there. I need you to rethink this. And so I see us as teachers having such this interdependence that we are making one another stronger. And by making professionals, teachers stronger, we can make what we do stronger, and that has this power in students. So I just feel the whole thing is making the quality of what we do so much more impactful. Does that answer your question?
Very much
Okay.
so. So I think, it's your turn, Stephanie. And so what would you want to tell us that you haven't had a chance to tell us in terms of this interview? What would you share with us yet that you'd want to share?
I think that teacher piece has been so invaluable to me. Dr. Lean used to say we taught in silos. And when he first started using that analogy, I didn't get it. I thought, this is my classroom. I know what I'm supposed to be doing in my classroom. But now that wall has been broken down, it would be so hard for me to go back to a situation where I didn't have that support from coworkers. Because now when I'm stuck on something, I don't know how to handle a tense situation with a student. I don't know how to create a final affirmation that has meaning. I can go to a science teacher for help. I can go to a math teacher for help. I can go to a social science teacher for help. I have so many more resources available to me that I don't have to feel like I'm going at it alone. And that has been huge because we as teachers have been able to build what we do using resources outside of our discipline. And so it's not just improving my English curriculum with the help of English teachers, it's improving my English curriculum with the help of strategies from a science teacher, strategies from a social science teacher. And so by sharing these strategies, we all are making what we do stronger. And that piece is so awesome. I feel like I have 30 people who have my back and who I'm supported by and encouraged by and who are intentionally investing in one another's lives and what we do. And that is so empowering as a teacher, to know that I'm not alone in this journey, and that means a lot.